if it's okay with you guys, I would like each of you to introduce yourselves. I think it's just more fun. Let's start with you, John.
Sure, I'm John Deaton. I'm an attorney most known for suing the SEC on behalf of 76,000 token holders. They were XRP, but the case is the Ripple case, most significant non-fraud securities case since 1946, and so that's why I'm here.
And you won the case.
Yes, I was amicus counsel in the case, and the judge determined that XRP, at the time that it was sued, was the third largest crypto token behind Bitcoin and Ethereum, that in and of itself, it is not a security, and when token holders go on Coinbase or Kraken or any other exchange, when they purchase it, they are not purchasing an unregistered security.
All right, so it's a big case. We're going to get back to that in a second.
Absolutely.
Jeremy Schwartz, recovering lawyer. I currently serve as general counsel to Mayor Francis Suarez, and prior to that, served as his chief of staff for just over 2 years, where we went through what people are now calling the Miami Miracle or the Miami Movement. And so we were very instrumental in attracting all of you guys here. And I'm grateful to be here and talk about this because this is a big issue, and it's going to have a deep impact on our local economies, our financial services system, and a lot of the transactional business that Miami does, not just for Latin America, but now increasingly with North America and Europe.
James.
James Koutoulas, CEO of Typhon Capital Management, multi-strat hedge fund, also the CEO of Judicial, a litigation asset marketplace. Was lead counsel in the MF Global bankruptcy, recovered all $6.7 billion that Gensler's mentor had frozen there, Mooch's buddy too, Corzine. Also now...
James and I have been fighting for 12 years. I'll fully disclose that. All right, but keep going.
Yeah, we'll keep it interesting for you here at 9 a.m.
All right.
But yeah, so beat Gensler 12 years ago, also suing the SEC now, and we'll beat them again.
You're suing the SEC for what?
To quash an unconstitutional subpoena of some political figures who bought a non-security crypto.
Okay, and so their defense is going to be what?
That the coin's not a security. The SEC never even alleged it's a security, but they're still trying to raid the bank accounts of some very major political figures.
Okay, all right. So if you guys are cool with it, I'd like to start with some macro questions. We'll go around the horn. Then I want to get into some specific cases, if that's okay. And I just want to just refresh everybody about where we are in terms of the land of crypto. We have, in my opinion, I'll just share this with everybody, Elizabeth Warren cut a deal with Joe Biden, when she dropped out of the race. She basically said, I'll come out of the race, I'll stay in the Senate, but I want to have control over all things related to financial services in the U.S. And she's got 3 or 4 of her staffers in the White House, and Gary Gensler, who has been one of her acolytes, is the head of the SEC. And of course, she picked Janet Yellen to be the Treasury Secretary. She absolutely hates the crypto landscape. So let's start with the macro. Why does she hate the crypto landscape, John?
Well, because she's now the biggest lobbyist for Jamie Dimon and the banks. Her bill that she just proposed, it's called anti-money laundering applied to crypto. But what it does is an effective ban on self-custody of Bitcoin and crypto in the United States. And she basically, just so you know, when she went to write the bill, she went to the Bankers Association and had them write the bill. The best thing to know, Anthony, and we're not going to talk about the specifics, to show you where we are with crypto and regulation in the United States, 2 years ago, the SEC, before Gensler took the helm, approved Coinbase and accelerated their IPO, which meant the SEC had to make a determination that it was in the public's best interest to accelerate the IPO of Coinbase. 2 years later, after Gary Gensler becomes in charge, he sues the Coinbase and says the entire business model is illegal. That's the state we're in right now.
Okay, so give us some color. You work for one of the most well-recognized political figures in the United States. You are also at the forefront of regulation. It's a pro-business city. I went to a conference in San Moritz. The woman who I met, who is running sort of the DIFC regulation in Dubai. She said to me she does not understand why the regulatory system has become so politicized in the United States. It's not about right or wrong or in the best interest of the country, but it's about the mood swings of different politicians. Why is that?
Right. At the local level, what we observed was, and especially since 2008, fewer people were able to access the financial system. Fewer people were able to keep what they earn, invest what they save, and own what they build. They were not able to benefit from a system that they thought their entire life. You save your money, you put it in the bank, you make a relatively reasonable interest, and then you could at one point maybe buy a house, maybe invest it, et cetera. They were excluded from that at the local level. I say not just poor people, but working poor people, working people, people who are trying to either get into the middle class or that's what we were observing. And we were also observing that this technology offered a way for people to participate in the market. And there was a belief that, technology is this sort of self-contained vertical, that only a certain few people know it and can inhabit it. We had a very different view, which is, one is we see a lot of people who need to be part of the financial system. Two, we have to think about technology as a horizontal concept. Every company is a technology company. The only difference is goods and services. And the third thing is that this wave of technology, just like Web 2.0, when it's integrated into the general economy, will create productivity gains, value creation, and wealth for an entire generation of people. And so our view at the local level was, look, it's important that we have a role in explaining it and understanding it, in looking out for our residents, for our constituents, and to mainstream it, which is why the mayor decided to put Satoshi's white paper on the website, which is why he took his salary in Bitcoin to demonstrate, to educate, and to show not only the political class in DC, but also everyone else that this is a new technology, and we could either embrace it or we could fight it. And in Miami, we chose to embrace it. And so that's where we are. And obviously, the SEC, it comes down to how you regulate. They're going to regulate in one form or another. But our point has been, look, no one wants fraud on the market. Everyone wants a transparent, productive, efficient market. But you do that by, bringing more people in. And in the case of crypto, you can't have traffic laws that are based on horse and buggy when you got a brand new, automobile. And that's what we were starting to observe. And that's really the view at the local level.
Why do we have so much politics in the regulatory process? And then do you find comfort in America's legal system, meaning that we do thankfully have a check and balance on autocratic regulators that are trying to abuse the system? So number one, why the politics? And number two, tell us about our judicial system and what you think there.
So the politics, it all comes down to control. Governments like having a monopoly over currency, right? It's the same reason the left wants to ban guns, right? They have a monopoly on violence and currency. Those are the two things governments are really good at. So crypto is a very democratizing technology because even if a government is deflating the value of a currency by massive fiat money printing, people can hedge that and go buy Bitcoin, be free of the financial system, right? Authoritarians hate this. If you look at China, they have a social credit system. They have a central bank digital currency. If you do things that the Chinese Communist Party don't like, they can debank you in a millisecond and just shut off all of your money, right? And Elizabeth Warren has come out and said this, that because crypto is so much used for money laundering when literally trillions have been laundered through the fiat system, and it's a small fraction of that in crypto, that we need to have a central bank digital currency where the government controls digital currency, right? If you look at the PayPal stablecoin, that's a private stablecoin that contains code to just zero out somebody's wallet as well. And that's a very dangerous thing. We've seen something going on in this country called Operation Choke Point 2.0. About a week or two ago, FinCEN was exposed at having bank accounts of conservatives closed. So you've seen weaponization throughout this Biden administration. They were found guilty by a trial court and an appellate court. It's now going to the Supreme Court in a case called Missouri versus Biden, where the administration knowingly conspired to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights to free speech and have them deplatformed off social media. So Fauci, the Surgeon General, the Department of Justice, the FBI have all been found by a trial court, affirmed by an appellate court, that this administration violated thousands of Americans' First Amendment rights. FinCEN has been shown to illegally direct the closing of Americans' bank accounts. So if you have a central bank digital currency, it becomes all that much easier. So to me, the fight for crypto is the fight for Western civilization and freedom versus central bank digital currencies are the tool of totalitarianism.
But I feel like the legal system, our judges are doing a good job. Am I
Judges are
wrong?
doing a great job.
100%. You made the perfect comment about a check on an autocratic agency. In the Ripple case that I talked about earlier, the federal judge said, quote, the SEC lacks faithful allegiance to the law. Then in Grayscale, they were denied a Bitcoin spot ETF. They sued, and the District Court of Appeals came back and said that it was arbitrary and capricious, that you were denying investors the right to a spot ETF while you were approving a futures ETF. The same rationale applies, and we won in that case. And we're seeing case after case of the court system holding the SEC accountable, and we got the spot ETF just because of the courts.
So Jeremy, let me play autocratic regulator, okay, and you're my chief strategist. So I don't like what's going on. James and John are winning court cases, courts siding against me. So am I capitulating? I'm autocratic regulator. Am I capitulating, or am I dialing it up and getting fiercer? And if I'm going to get fiercer, you're my strategist. What's my strategy?
I mean, one strategy would be to double down and to use the regulatory tools that you have to ensure that the definitions, which is really what this is about. This is a debate on definitions. Do we use 20th century definitions to cover a 21st century technology, or do we create entirely new 21st century definitions? And what are they? And I think
but
that's...
you need the legislature. You would need
Right.
somebody like the House of Representatives or the Senate to actually legislate. They don't like doing that because it costs them elections. That's why we run the budget on continuing resolutions. They don't want to give any new laws out because they're concerned about it being controversial. So let's say that we have a status quo situation in the legal environment. Go ahead. How do I turn up the screws on this industry and make it more difficult for these two gentlemen, John and James, to win cases?
You litigate until it chills the market, and you up the leverage. I mean, this is what they've done in a number of many different cases. You also creatively, again, we were just mentioned definitions. It's all about, if you define the terms of the argument, you win the argument. And this is what the battle is. Both of these gentlemen are fighting, as yourself, to define the parameters of this debate. And that's what the faithful allegiance to the law, which is what you referenced. And so I think and that's what's happening.
So James, the SEC says that Bitcoin is a commodity, right? You know, Gensler's been on the table. Bitcoin is a commodity. They lost a court case that Ripple is not a security, so I guess definitionally we'll call that a commodity. Why are they saying things like Filecoin, you pick the coins, Algorand, all of these things are commodities when they have the same features and they have the same sort of weights and scales of things like Ripple?
Well, Algorand's an interesting one to cite because Gary Gensler unabashedly...
I own a shit ton of Algorand, so I'll just be like fully disclosed on that, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think Gensler does too, or at least he did. I mean, he unabashedly shilled it when he was a MIT professor.
He was tight with Sylvia McCallie. in his disclosures, he owned Algorand. And I actually have this whole theory about Gensler. He actually likes the blockchain. If you watch the 24 segments of his lectures, he likes the blockchain, but he likes the idea of being Treasury Secretary more than the blockchain. And so he knows he can't be Treasury Secretary if Elizabeth Warren doesn't like him, so whatever she wants, he's going to do. But let's go to the...
So that's completely correct. Yeah, I mean...
So how do you make these things securities when the court says something that's exactly like these things isn't a security?
Right, so Algorand was listed as one of the alleged illegal securities that Coinbase listed by the SEC, despite Gensler saying exactly the contrary before becoming chairman. But Gensler himself, going back to what you said about new legislation, went before Congress in April 2021 and said the SEC does not have statutory authority to regulate cryptocurrency exchanges. He says we need new laws. Okay, the Supreme Court has found in 5 different cases that a doctrine called the major question doctrine exists, where a regulatory agency cannot assert jurisdiction over a major question of economic or political authority without explicit congressional authority. Gensler recognized that before Congress. You have draft bills in both houses of Congress. So the judiciary actually needs to step it up and start issuing sanctions. And there actually is a case where the SEC apparently maliciously lied. They also lied in a false affidavit in the case that I'm suing them as well. And they need to get sanctioned. Their attorneys need to start losing their law licenses because what they're doing is completely unconstitutional and is not founded in law.
Okay, let's go to you, John. We'll do a little bit rapid fire here. Is this a Democratic Party issue? Will the Republicans do the same thing?
It's an age issue is what we're seeing.
It's an age issue.
Yes, you're seeing, we've got to get rid of these 80-year-old, 90-year-old U.S. senators in Congress.
Just don't say 60-year-old.
No.
Don't hurt us.
I'm pushing there, so I'm definitely not going to say that. But listen, you had someone like Dianne Feinstein, she passed away, God bless her and all that, but she was 90 years old, had a power of attorney in her personal affairs to her daughter, and they're wheeling her into the Senate, whispering in her ear how to vote. They're saying, say aye, say aye, say aye, and she's all confused, right? She's a Democrat. We can go to Chuck Grassley in Iowa, a Republican, but when you get these senators in their 80s and 90s, and now they're voting on artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, it's an age issue.
So it's an age issue. Republicans are more friendly to crypto?
No. Well, look, Republicans historically believe in the free market and the freedom of people to build businesses and to start businesses and to earn wealth, and that by doing good and by doing well, everyone does well. I see this as a Washington, rest of the country issue, and I will say what John said. There is a generational dynamic, but it's not ageist per se, because there are a lot of people from a variety of different generations who have a youthful, innovative mentality. And so I think that this is more of a general philosophical approach, which is, do you embrace the next generation of technology and see the benefits and the upside to it, or are you inherently against, you are in favor of the status quo and you are inherently hostile to anything that opens it or disrupts it?
So James, I'm going to make you the regulatory czar. You've now been appointed to clean up the regulatory situation in the United States, where when you do polling, people say, wow, it's incredibly political. We don't really know if they're focused on right or wrong. It seems like they're focused on either left or right. But now you're going to clean it up, and you're going to make it a nonpartisan process. How do we do that, sir?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the draft bills that are in the House and the Senate now aren't bad. They're good starting points.
And they're bipartisan, right?
Yeah, they're mostly bipartisan. I mean, again, Warren is pro-central bank digital currency. If you look at like DeSantis, Trump, RFK are anti-central bank digital currency. But like John said, in Grayscale and XRP, the legal system worked. In FTX, the legal system worked, right? You got 110 years is the expected prison time coming for SBF for criminal fraud, right? And that was a completely unregulated exchange. So I think one of the things people get confused a lot of, that you need regulations to prosecute crime, and that's just not true, right? Like our existing anti-fraud criminal and civil statutes provide a basis of recovery and supposedly deterrence from frauds being done in the crypto space, right? So where regulation comes in, the SEC it's a disclosure regime, right? The SEC didn't stop FTX. Instead, they had a lot of meetings with both the SEC and the CFTC. They were given, kind of the fox in the henhouse inside track to be the first, regulated crypto broker dealer. So, really what regulation does is it gives the marketplace, comfort. You're going to have certain best practices followed. You're going to have regulators coming in there and auditing. But
But is there a way to depoliticize it, or there isn't?
I think it's really hard because it's just, it's a fundamental issue. And I agree, a lot of, the boomers, they don't get crypto, but Warren does. She absolutely gets it, and she wants to use it as a tool for control. So to me, it's a freedom versus tyranny issue rather than, a per se like party line issue. There's Republicans, I think, who are pro-tyranny too, but I think more of them are pro-decentralization.
There's a Republican running for president that's pro-tyranny, but go ahead.
Obviously, my boss, Francis Suarez, believes that this is generational technology, and it's the type of technology that can transform how our economy runs, but also how we do politics. I've actually met a lot of Democrats, next generation Democrats, who do see the value of Web3 technology and crypto. The mayor of Atlanta has embraced a lot of the things that we're doing here in Miami. The mayor of New York has embraced, we had a crypto competition. It's there. Wherever you can create value for working people, where they can save their money, where they can grow their wealth, where they can own things in a secure way, it's been very receptive.
Is Coinbase is being sued by the SEC? You said that their business approved by the SEC is now deemed illegal by the SEC. Are they going to win that case?
Ultimately, they're going to win. Right now, they have a motion to dismiss. And normally at this stage, a motion to dismiss, as a lawyer, I would tell you, has a 5% chance at best. I put Coinbase's up near the 40% range, which is big for a motion to dismiss, but ultimately they're going to win. The question is, do they win at the district court level? Do they win at the Second Circuit? Everyone agrees that if it gets to the Supreme Court, the current makeup of the Supreme Court, they're going to invoke major questions.
Well, yeah, Gensler, those guys won't even go to the Supreme Court with something like this because they know they'll be embarrassed by the court.
The thing is this, Anthony, you said you own Algo, and I know you own Bitcoin, right? You're one of 55 million Americans that own this asset class. 1 out of 4 adults owned crypto. People in the United States want access to this asset class. And so what we're seeing right now is the control factor.
So interesting. It's a great quote, the 55 million. We now think it could be closer to 70 million because of the introduction of the ETFs. Not Grayscale, Coinbase, they win the case?
Absolutely.
All right, we got 3 minutes to go, so I want to go round robin here for a second. If the Democrats lose, a more crypto-friendly SEC comes in?
Yes, the first thing is getting rid of Gary Gensler. And once we get rid of Gary Gensler, if we get someone in that says, listen, we want to be, pro-business, pro-investor, but pro-business and work. It's not that difficult to say, here's a framework. This asset class, we can't apply 1934 Securities Act laws to this modern day technology. So we come up with a framework and say, if you meet these markers, it's a commodity and it's going to be governed by the CFTC. If you don't meet these factors, then it's going to be deemed a security governed by the SEC. It's not that difficult to do. And if we get some smart people, which this industry has, we could solve this just like that, once we get the politics out of it.
Yes, and I'd also say there's a good chance Congress will, through its statutory authority, define a digital asset. because we're doing it at the state level. Wyoming, Florida, we've already passed digital asset laws. And what does that mean? That gives us more definition, more legal character. So for example, secure transactions, Article 9, we've defined it in the state of Florida, as in Wyoming. This is happening at the state level. It's happening at the local level. I think whoever the next administration is with the new team, they're going to have a much more sophisticated approach. They're going to look at the opportunities and they're going to define it.
The ETF for Ethereum has been filed. The application's in. The deadline is, I think, in sometime in May. The SEC approves the Ethereum application, or they try to kick the can down the road?
It's a good question. I think ultimately it goes the same way as Grayscale, where to deny it would be deemed arbitrary and capricious, given that there's a futures ETF. Ethereum is a particularly squirrely case, since Ethereum has some features that could lead people to point it as a security, but the SEC missed the statute of limitations. And in fact, Bill Hinman, there's a lot of controversy over his emails. There's some potential conflicts with, him being commissioner and also representing some of, ETH's, founders. But as we stand today, I think it's very unlikely that ETH could be found a security, like that genie has long left the bottle. So, ultimately an ETH ETF will be approved.
But it may or may not be in May. They may kick the can down.
They might try to reject it, and then, the SEC likes to stall, right? So they reject, they get sued, they lose in the trial court, it goes to appellate court. That's what happened with BTC.
All right, well, that wraps up our regulatory discussion. Guys, thanks for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, John, Jeremy, and James, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.